So this is the first YouTube original movie that looked even remotely interesting. And by that I mean, it looked pretty promising actually. But I think it needs a bit of context, because I feel like I might be unusually biased here. First of all, it's about rap battling. Now, I'm not a huge fan of the battle scene, but I am a huge fan of hip-hop. Especially the lyrical kind. I like it when they actually have something to say, and say it in a clever way. This thing is also produced by Eminem, and I'm a huge fan of Eminem, especially his older stuff. The new stuff, not so much. But anyway, he knows how to rhyme, and he knows about the culture, and he was involved in making 8 Mile. So I was pretty sure this movie wasn't gonna feel inauthentic. But on the other hand, the trailer didn't look that great. I didn't love it. And having seen the movie now, I would say the trailer doesn't really accurately convey the feel of the movie. This thing was a bit different than I'd expected. Now, I'd seen the word subversive used in some promos, and I can't stand that word. It's just been so overused these last few years, and kinda co-opted by SJWs. But as it turns out, it's actually the perfect word to describe this movie, because that's what it is. It's subversive. It subverted my expectations. Again and again, in a good way. It knows exactly what you expect to see and then turns that on its head. And it does it over and over. It sets something up exactly the way you'd think and then does something different. And this thing is funny too. It's goddamn hilarious at some points. And it addresses PC culture, SJWs, racial stereotypes, basically anything that's going on in the media these days. But it does it in a super self-aware way. It's actually one of the most self-aware movies I've ever seen. And that could be a problem. It could come across as awkward, but it doesn't. It makes fun of itself and everyone else and points out all the hypocrisies and all the ridiculousness that's going on in the world and how absurd some of it actually is. And it does it while being funny and it never feels preachy. That's kinda astonishing. They also take into account mainstream audiences that might not be that into rap. They use this white as white can be girlfriend character as a substitute for the audience, so the main character explains everything to her, in detail, in hilarious ways, because she's not that into rap. She doesn't understand it. I thought that was a pretty clever way to bring everyone into the fold. So you can watch it with your grandma. Anyway, the acting's great too. I mean, the supporting cast is great, but Calum is fantastic. He's so dynamic, just jumps from one mode to another seamlessly and makes it look effortless. This thing is well shot too. It looks good and has some fun little edits here and there too. They could have gone overboard with it, but I don't think they did. And I had a really good time with this movie. But it does get pretty deep and complex too at times. But I felt like it handled the comedy and the more serious stuff very well. So that's all fine and dandy. But I did have a few issues with it too. Nothing that ruined the movie for me. I still enjoyed it a lot. But I think it could have been even better. One of the problems being the central plot. The actual story, it's a bit of a non-story. It's about a guy who's writing his thesis on battle rap and the use of the N-word. And of course he gets involved with the battle rap scene and starts battling too. And his girlfriend doesn't like it. So there's some conflict there. He also gets friendly with one of the other rappers. But overall, there's not that much to the actual story. As far as the narrative goes, it doesn't really go anywhere. It's really more about the philosophy and the politics, about what's appropriate and what's offensive and what's not, and why something's appropriate or offensive. And if you really break it down, the whole movie is essentially just a dialogue about that. I think it's less of a story than it is a conversation that's being had through these characters and these different situations. But I do feel the core narrative as it is does work, but it could have been a lot stronger. But maybe that's really part of the appeal too. It doesn't really have a conventional narrative with your average character arcs. I guess because that would be expected, and this thing doesn't want to be predictable. And at the end of the day, I didn't feel like that was a huge problem either. The bigger problem for me were the last 30 minutes or so. It's just a series of battles, one after another, and instead of culminating in one big showdown, it kinda drags on. And I feel like that part wasn't as impactful or poignant as it could have been. Now, there is some really intense and great stuff in there, but I think it could have been distilled into one big battle instead of a series of them. that takes up like 30 minutes. So it kind of fizzled out there towards the end for me. And as good as it was just a bit too much. But overall I still enjoyed this movie a lot. It's easily one of the funniest movies of the year for me. So would I recommend it? Yeah, for sure. Definitely worth checking out, even if you're not into rap. So go watch it. Or don't. I'm not your dad. And hey, what's with the CGI cat? There's this cat that shows up in the background, like 10 times. What's that about? Seemed a little weird.